the Portland Trailblazers are a team that just, I mean, really, they create matchup problems where they have three capable, good 7-footers, which is kind of absurd, where they have Yusuf Nurkich, they have Zach Collins, and Hassan Whiteside. And before the NBA restart, originally when the season left off, they did not have Nurkic, and Zach Collins was injured. Both of them were injured. And now, the restart gave them a lot of time to heal. They got Nurkic back when he wasn't supposed to play at all this year. They got Zach Collins back. And now the Blazers have an embarrassment of riches where, and maybe Nurkic was supposed to come back. I honestly don't know. I know that he's back now, and I know personally I didn't expect him to come back. Maybe there was some timetable I'm not aware of. But the point is that now the Blazers have more size than they were expected to have. And then not only do they have 3 7-footers who are all very capable of being NBA starters, you also have Blazers. The Blazers can hit threes, man. They have Damian Lillard, CJ McCollum, Carmelo Anthony, who's not the same as he once was, but man, we'll talk about the role he's found with the Blazers. That's so cool. And then this guy, Trent Jr., Trent Jr. had 4 3-pointers against the Grizzlies. I just was like, wow, okay. Wow. And it was crazy, man. Yusuf Nurkich really, really brings his team together. We'll get into that in a minute. But Carmelo Anthony, to me, fits really well with this Blazers team. And I'm so happy for him. I thought at one point Carmelo Anthony's career was over, and it was really sad. A sad fall from grace where he was once a star that clearly wasn't capable of being a star anymore. And now Melo's not the star with the Blazers, but he's found a role and somewhat of a niche really, really well with them where it just works. And the Blazers are such a tight-knit group. And there's a lot of camaraderie. I mentioned Yusuf Nurkich, and he's been a really vital part of this roster. He's done one of the best jobs I have ever seen from a player who gets hurt but stays engaged with the team, really sticking around and hanging around there, being an emotional leader. And the leadership that Yusuf Nurkich has shown really clearly had an influence on Zach Collins, where, in 2018, the 2018-2019 season, not earlier this year, but actually last year, not the season that was canceled and postponed and moved back to August for the NBA restart. No, last year, the year before last, Yusuf Nurkich had a really bad injury, a horrific knee injury, gets hurt. And then a month later, he's on the bench yelling. He's there with his teammates, I believe in a cast, just doing his thing, supporting the people there, supporting the Blazers, supporting his teammates. And Yusuf did not play for over a year away from basketball. No, I get it. He was training, scrimmaging, doing whatever he had to do. But didn't play in a live game for over a year until the NBA restart opener for the Blazers against the Grizzlies. And he was great, man. He looked like he hadn't lost a step. You're like, how do you not skip a beat? We saw guys, Paul George was playing earlier in March, right? And Paul George in the NBA opener against the Lakers, the second game of the year, the NBA restart, Paul George was awful shooting in the early part of the game. And Yusuf Nurkich did not look rusty at all. And here's what's cool. When Zach Collins, another Blazers 7-footer, got hurt, Zach followed Yusuf Nurkich's example. He stayed engaged. He stayed close. And it's just crazy, man. Coming back after a year off like Yusuf Nurkic did, not missing a beat against the Grizzlies, playing great, having 9 rebounds, 18 points, 5 assists, 6 blocks. He eventually did foul out, I believe, right at the beginning of overtime. You're like, but he's had a valiant performance, and I really want to give him credit. He makes a huge impact inside on defense. Even if his stat line is solid, 18 points, 9 rebounds, the 6 blocks were a big, big deal in this game. And then the story comes out about Yusuf Nurkich where his grandma in Bosnia has coronavirus. And they're like, what? She's in a coma? In a hospital in Bosnia? It's just wild to me. And I find Yusuf Nurkich, I like rooting for players. He's a player that's so easy to like because of his great attitude, his clear work ethic. He's like I think somebody called him the spirit animal of the Blazers recently, where someone was talking about how he's just our heart and soul of our team. And I mean, the Blazers are a playoff team, if you ask me, and not because of an emotional connection. I know I live in the Portland area. I'm actually not a Blazer fan. I just really respect what they have. But here's what's cool. Again, the Blazers are a tough matchup. Their height is incredible. They have 3 7-footers that are all very capable of being NBA starters. They can hit threes. They have 4 guys who can do that. They have Damian Lillard, who is criminally underrated. I mean, Damian Lillard can score inside. He can shoot. He's such a complete offensive player, but then he's also a great leader. This is another part of his game that's underappreciated. There was a moment where nearing the end of the third quarter, the Blazers were down. They were in danger, down 11 points. And Dame literally pulled the 5 guys on the court all together into a huddle. And I would love to know what Damian Lillard said. I really don't know. But whatever he said in that huddle, a switch was flipped. It worked because the energy ramped up. The defensive effort went up. And, just 2 minutes later, right at the end of the third quarter, this happened with just around 3 minutes left in the third quarter. They were down 11. By the end of the third quarter, a little over 2 minutes later, the Blazers were only down 3 points. An 8-point deficit gone like that. And then another minute later, 1 minute into the fourth quarter, the Blazers had the lead. So whatever Damian Lillard said, I have no idea what he said, but it's clear he's a motivating factor on that team where they follow him. And they seem like a team on a mission. From everything they've said, all the things they talk about, they're not here for the ride. The Blazers are here to upset some people and really, really show that they are not the same team that had a losing record in March. They're a better team, much more improved with different people. And I got to say this too. I've been talking about the Blazers the entire topic. I haven't said one thing about the Grizzlies. And I want to say this. For the majority early on in this game, I was really not impressed with Ja Morant. I don't know if not impressed is the right word. He was underwhelming. Ja Morant is potentially going to be the NBA Rookie of the Year. He's a Grizzlies rookie. He's he's phenomenal. Statistically, he's great. And again, for most of this game, I was sitting around going where's Ja Morant? When is Ja Morant going to do anything? And at halftime, for example, Ja Morant had 2 points at halftime. You're like, this is the guy who's going to win NBA Rookie of the Year? But I got to give the guy credit. In the third quarter, Ja Morant came alive. He really stepped up. He had a big alley-oop. It was loud. It was energizing. It really boosted the people around him on his team. And then he had a big bucket around some point in the third quarter where, that lead I talked about where there was a point where the Grizzlies were ahead by 11 points in the third quarter. That all started when the Grizzlies took a lead, which is when Ja Morant had a really good bucket to make it 82-81. I went, wow, okay. Ja Morant really is stepping into things. I wanted to give him a shout out. I don't have a lot to say. This topic really is all about the Blazers, but shout out to Ja Morant. He was in danger of not impressing me, and then I was like, oh, okay, there he is. He scored some points and really came alive in the second half. Now, one play I really, really loved from the Blazers was really an example of CJ McCollum's unselfishness where right at the end of regulation, because this game went to overtime, CJ McCollum gets a pass. He's, beyond the arc, around what am I saying? The elbow. If you go beyond the arc, behind the elbow, whatever part of the basketball court that is called technically, he's behind the 3-point line. Catches a pass. A guy's closing out on him, and he unselfishly, instead of shooting a contested 3, he finds Carmelo Anthony wide open. Carmelo Anthony for the game-tying 3, bam, drains it. And that led the Blazers to overtime. And I was like, oh, yes. I was so happy watching, Zach Collins and Yusuf Nurkich, rub the head of Carmelo Anthony and celebrate. I was like, oh, this team is fun, man. I don't care who you are. They got really interesting people on their team. And in overtime, the Blazers dominated. I mean, at one point in overtime, the Blazers led by 11 points. And the Grizzlies did not score for the first 3 minutes of overtime. And remember, overtime's only 5 minutes, so they didn't score until 2 minutes left in overtime. And my final comment on this game, I guess, is to say that the only part of this game I didn't like, I had a really good time with it. I was really glad Ja Morant did come alive. I'd be upset if I said, hey, Ja Morant only had 2 points in the entire game, because I like Ja Morant. I want him to become another big star in the NBA. That'd be really cool to have another. Okay, wow, the Grizzlies have a young player. The more young players you can have that are growing in the league and making the league better, the better it is for everybody. But the one thing I got to say about this game that I found really frustrating, if you watched it, let me know too. I felt this way where the referees called a bunch of really ridiculous and weird technical fouls. It just was silly, where you could not say anything. They did not allow trash talk, and I don't even know if trash talk is the right word there. You couldn't say anything to anybody. You couldn't talk to you couldn't dunk on somebody and then walk away and not say it in the guy's face, but say it off into the ether and go, yeah, I'm the king, you suck. You couldn't say anything, right? And you also couldn't even say anything to your own NBA bench, which is weird, let alone the other team. But why can't you celebrate with your own bench? It was weird to me. And it felt like the refs went a little bit overboard. I just didn't quite like that. It was annoying. But in the end, the Blazers won 140 to 135 in overtime. And, man, they move a step closer to the playoffs. The Blazers are in the playoff hunt. And they are a team that I think is setting themselves up very, very well to upset somebody in the first round of the NBA playoffs. Maybe if they're the 8 seed and the LA Lakers are the 1 seed, maybe the team they've upset in the first round of the NBA playoffs is, in fact, LeBron James and the Lakers. How wild would that be?